Hey there, welcome back to another review, this time on the last film in the Rocky franchise. Creed's a spinoff. I don't consider it a Rocky film. Rocky's in it, but I don't consider it a Rocky movie. Rocky Balboa, which is one of my favorites. I saw the film in the theater. It's the only Rocky film I've been able to see in the theater. It's a film I was really excited for before it was even officially greenlit because I was one of the few people who actually had a copy of the first issue of Sly's fitness magazine called Sly, and in it there was a little bit of he shared a little bit of the screenplay, and so I knew about the film even before it was greenlit, and I think it took a while. Even the magazine came out, and then it took a while before the film was even greenlit, but MGM decided to greenlight it, and the rest is history. And this is a film that I enjoyed when I saw it in the theater, and I still enjoy it. I've seen it probably a few times since, including the most recent time I saw it for the first time on Blu-ray. And I like this movie. I always have. I think it only got like a little bit over a 70% Rotten Tomatoes, which I think is a little bit too low. Um, I think the film's a little bit underrated nowadays. I think it's every bit as good to me personally as the first as Rocky and Rocky 2. Like I'm telling you, I love this franchise. Like 5 out of the 6 films I just love. They're some of my favorite films that Stallone has done. And I don't find much wrong with this film other than a poor antagonist and Mason Aline Dixon, played by Antonio Tarver, who can't act. Much like the same problem I have with Tommy Gunn. Um, and the realism of the final fight. I preferred the sound effects. I preferred the way the punches sounded in the other films because as a movie, it doesn't need to be realistic to me. So I preferred the way the punches sounded in the other films, and there was a little bit of pacing problems, but that's it. That's not really much. It doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the film that much at all, though. I thought it was a very compelling film, a very an inspiring movie, and it's a film that has sequences I will never forget. The scene where he's talking to his son. There are quotes from this film that I've used in my own life to get through tough times, to get through, especially after you know, when I get hit by a car, especially after the accident. Ran across the middle of the street when I wasn't supposed to, got hit by a car, flew 15 feet in the air. That's why I have this scar right here. I'm lucky that's all I did was just break my nose and break some teeth because I mean I could have been dead easily. Cars are going 30, 35 miles per hour and I get hit and I do a backflip in midair and fly 15 feet. I mean, and I used a quote from this film to get me through, a little bit of the recovery, of all I was bruised and sore and messed up, and confidence was down too because I'm kind of scared of going across the street because I don't know what's gonna happen. And I was also at that time I was also at school. I was at Clark College. I was taking classes, and it was the speech from this film where someone's talking to his son, and he said, it ain't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. And that just propelled me to recover. It propelled me to, as soon as I could walk without too much pain, go back to school and finish the term. And I passed every single one of my classes. And I did that. I did it. And this film, and its words of wisdom, is one of the main reasons why I did that. It just I kept repeating that to myself over and over again when I was thinking about maybe I can't do this, maybe it won't work, maybe I'm hurting, I'm sore, it's maybe I should just not try to finish this term. No, it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how much you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's about how much you can take and keep moving forward. And I still use that to this day for my life. I recently did not pass my first math class in Clark College. Math's a hard subject for me. I got a D because I didn't do as well in some of the tests as I really wanted to. So I didn't get an F, but I didn't necessarily pass because I didn't get a C, so I can't move forward. But I'm not letting that stop me. It's not about how hard I hit, it's about how hard I can get hit. And I got hit hard there. I'm already up off on the canvas and I'm ready to fight again. And I'm ready to pass that. I'm retaking the class and I'm ready to pass it and I'm ready to win. So this this film in particular, more than any of the other Rocky films recently, has given me so much inspiration. And that's something that I will always hold near and dear to my heart, is the inspiration that this film has given me in my own life. So anyway, it's also a pretty damn good movie in its own right too. So what I was saying, it's a nice throwback film. It's an old school type film, which you don't see now very much. You didn't see very much back in 2006, and you didn't see nowadays. Sylvester Stallone comes back to direct the movie. He did a great job directing the second film, Rocky 3, Rocky 4. This is his return to directing after 21 years, and it's not one of those direct returns that doesn't feel natural, or it's a great return. It's not like Walter Hill's return, for instance, for Bullet to the Head, which is pathetic. No, he returns from 21 years of not directing and directs a really good movie. He does a really good job directing Rocky Balboa. Some really good shots in this. I love the lighting in this film. I really love the cinematography, especially in the fight with the black and white and with a little bit, of a color, like maybe a little bit of yellow or blood, is in color. It's like a Sin City type cinematography and editing, and I like that. I thought it added something really unique and interesting to the final fight. And I love how the film just takes the whole franchise and makes it full circle. Everything comes full circle. And I really like that. I think it's a perfect way to end the franchise. Um, it's how I always remember the franchise. It's how I always remember the franchise ending. I'm not gonna remember it with the end of Creed. I'm gonna remember it at the end of Rocky Balboa, where people are chanting Rocky's name and he's waving at the crowd and pointing his finger in the air and holding somebody's hand, and then a freeze frames on Rocky holding a fan's hand. That I'm gonna remember that more than I remember the ending of Creed. Um, and more on Creed later. That's a film where my opinions have really, it's complicated. I'll talk about it soon enough. But anyway, Rocky Balboa was a surprise hit when it came out. Stallone was on a very, I mean, a lot of people say he did this for the money. In some ways, yeah, probably. That's kind of, but I think the main reason why he did it is he needed to resurrect his career. It wasn't just for the money. It was to resurrect his career and to get respect and to get a little bit of dignity back, because he had been doing nothing but direct-to-video movies before this and doing stuff like Spy Kids 3D, where he plays like a ridiculous villain and just making an ass out of himself. So he went back to the well one more time with Rocky, like he did in 1985, when his career was also in a similar uh, downward arc, a downward spiral, if I could say the fucking word spiral. So in a downward spiral, and he ended up resurrecting his career in a big way and had like the biggest year he'd ever had. Like 1985 was the year of Stallone. Rocky 4 and Rambo 2 were two of the biggest hits of that year. And then his career slipped again. He slipped again, and then he decided, all right, let's go back to Rocky. And of course, eventually Rambo too, as well. And it worked. Against all odds, he did it again. He did a career resurrection the third time. I mean, it's an insane. I mean, he is Rocky. Like in real life, he's Rocky. He gets knocked down, he gets back up and keeps fighting. As much as I don't like his recent films, I still admire the man, and he's still a huge inspiration to me. So Rocky comes out. Critics are surprised by how good it is, and the audiences reacted really well to it. It made back its budget and then some. Even made 34 million on home video. So, and the film was only like a $24 million budgeted film, and it made about $155.7 million total box office. So it was a pretty surprising hit for MGM. So Stallone, of course, returns as director, and he returns as Rocky. And you also have Burt Young, who comes back as Paulie, his brother-in-law and his friend. Adrian doesn't come back. Talia Shire is not in this film because her character passes away. You don't see her die. The film already takes place after her death, a few years after her death. She passed away of cancer. And this is something that Talia Shire actually supported. This wasn't a decision that Stallone decided to do without her input. Originally, he had original draft of the script, which had Rocky being a trainer for, youths, and Adrian was still in the story. But Rocky just felt, and Stallone really. I mean, Stallone is Rocky, so I get confused. So Stallone felt that there was something missing from that story. There wasn't enough drama, and so he decided, I think it would be better if we took Adrian away from him in the beginning, and then had him in the beginning of the film dealing with that, and that's where you get the reason why he needs to get back in the ring, because he's got the beast. He's got that beast inside of him. He's still got still got stuff left in the basement that he wants to get out. This hurt, this pain, because of this loss that he's had, because he lost Adrian, and so that was a decision. He even asked Talia Shire for permission, and she agreed with it. And so Adrian's no longer in the film as, the actress. Talia Shire's not in the film, but her presence is still absolutely felt in flashbacks. And Stallone, his character, Rocky, he has a restaurant named Adrian's, and there's pictures of her all over the place, and along with his boxing memorabilia. So she's maybe gone, but she's still there in spirit. And you also have a few more newcomers, but you have like one more. You actually have some surprising returns. You have Pedro Lovell, who played Spider Rico. So Spider Rico returns and is now a friend of Rocky's, and he works at the restaurant. Tony Burton also comes back as Duke, Rocky's trainer. And then you also have some newcomers. You have Milo Ventimiglia as Rocky Balboa Jr., Rocky's son. And I thought he did a great job. It was a great casting choice too. And even Stallone admits that he casted him because he has sort of a downturned lip like Stallone does, and he even has a similar bone, similar eyes. It was really a great casting choice because I could really believe that the two were related. And I know the thing about Sage Stallone originally, but Stallone was like, I don't know, people would kind of not be able to focus as much on the story as much because they just focus more on, okay, instead of just Rocky and his son, Rocky's son trying to get out of his shadow, it's Stallone's son trying to get out of his shadow. So he just decided to go with a different actor. And Milo Ventimiglia did a great job, so I didn't think it was necessarily a bad idea. And you also have Geraldine Hughes, who comes in and plays grown-up Little Marie. Now, the original actress, she sued Stallone because I guess she signed a deal that I guess there was some deal that she would be in the movie, but this actress, she's not really, doesn't have the right look for this type of character, and she's not really the best actress either. Geraldine Hughes is a much better actress, but Stallone settled out of court with her, and the same actress is also in Rocky 5 as the prostitute, grown-up Little Marie, which I'm glad that was cut out. There was a scene that was cut out, and I'm glad it wasn't in the movie, because then you wouldn't have this Little Marie, which this grown-up little Marie, which I really like. I think it's a great performance of Geraldine Hughes. It's a character you like, you care about, and she does a good job filling the role that Adrian had in Rocky's life. Now they don't really share the attraction or anything like that. That's not what it is. But she's there for him as she's there for him for emotional support. She's there to tell him, you know, things that he needs to know. She's there to build him up, just like Adrian did. And especially in sequences like the one where she's saying, like, talking to Rocky, and he doesn't know if he wants to fight or not. And she's like, fighters fight. You do what you have to do. And so she did a great job. I really liked her performance. Um, and then you have Antonio Tarver, who he can't act. And when I found out that he was like really reluctant to do the fight and because he wanted more money, and Stallone ended up taking a part of his salary and giving it to Tarver so he could be in the fight, because the fight was the first scene that was filmed for the movie, the fight between Tarver and between Mason the Line Dixon and Rocky Balboa, because Stallone had trained for like 6 months, and he needed to do the fight first, otherwise he would lose some of he wouldn't be in as good of shape because he would be focusing more on directing the movie. So they shot the fight first, and what's interesting is the fight was actually shot in at a casino, and it was actually before, I think it was before a real fight with Lennox Lewis, and it was like a big fight, and it was pretty much what it is. Bernard Hopkins, not Lennox Lewis, because Lennox Lewis is like old news. But yeah, during pre-production, the filmmakers tried to find a good location to shoot the fight, and they met with constant obstacles because every suitable arena was booked out. Sylvester Stallone knew that HBO had an upcoming pay-per-view event with Bernard Hopkins taking on Jermaine Taylor in the main event at the Mandalay Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. So Stallone suggested that the film could piggyback the real event using the real HBO format, the real crowd, and even the real press conference setup. As such, the press conference scene was shot only moments after the real press conference with Hopkins and Taylor, whilst the scene when Rocky walks through the curtain and down to the ring was shot using the real Hopkins-Taylor crowd. Stallone was hoping the crowd wouldn't boo or cause any problems, but as he made his way to the ring as Rocky, the whole building gave him a standing ovation and began to chant, "Rocky! Rocky!" And the crowd was never told to stand up or chant. They had done it completely on their own. And according to the filmmakers, by far the biggest cheer of the night was for Rocky, not for any of the real fighters. And so the look of the smile on Stallone's face when he gets into the ring, when he waves goodbye to everybody, that's real, genuine emotion. That's not acting, because this is actual Rocky fans filling the stadium, just chanting Rocky's name as if he was a real character. And a lot of people, he is. To a lot of people, Rocky is not just a fictional character than them. He's much more than that. And I agree with that in some ways. Just because he isn't real doesn't necessarily a real person doesn't mean he isn't real to me. Like there's so many things about this character that I can relate to in my own life, and all of us can, that makes this character stand out from a lot of these other fictional characters, because it's not really necessarily something that's too far-fetched. It's not someone who's totally, from a fantasy land. It's a little bit of a fantasy, but it's not totally a fantasy. And I think that's something a lot of people see in Rocky, and that's why he appeals to a lot of people. He's the underdog. I mean, everybody wants to root for the underdog, and he's fought a lot of battles in his life against a lot of odds, and he's overcame them. And that's something that a lot of people want to do in their lives, or already have done. So yeah, but Tarver, he took the pay raise, which I don't think he deserved, because he can't act. And the fight itself, I mean, I know they went for the more realistic sound effects of the punches, but I really liked the way the punches sounded in the other films, because it had much more impact, packed more of a punch. It's trying to be more realistic, but this is a movie. I don't think we really needed to be realistic. It's not, having Rocky at like age 60 in the ring isn't necessarily that much realistic anyway. So it really didn't need to have the extra add of realism with the punches sounding very weak, because that's supposed to be normal, regular, realistic punches, I guess. That's one change I didn't really care for. But I loved the fight. I thought it was well edited, well shot. I love the cinematography, the Sin City style editing with the black and white and the colors. And Stallone and Tarver, they actually hit each other. When Stallone gets knocked down for a 9 count, and he's like psyching himself up to get up, that was a real, that was a real hit. Stallone actually did get knocked down onto his knees for like a 9 count. There are other scenes where Stallone gets knocked down. He really does. That's an actor for you, taking real hits from a real boxer. So that this fight is definitely one of the most, I would say, one of the most powerful fights, because of the fact that it's. I mean, I love the fight in Rocky 4 and Rocky 3, but this one, there's just the hits. They feel so much more real. It's because they are. So I mean that's I mean, the other ones, you could feel the impact, absolutely. Definitely can feel it. But these, there's just something else to them. It just feels like there's just this heavy weight behind them, and just bam, and just a lot of them were just like, ooh, man, ah. So, because it is, the real fights. Stallone was knocked unconscious and near the end of the final fight. So he had to be woken up, and they had to, eh, big, big kudos to Sly for getting in there at, what was he, 60 years old or something, and just taking hits from a light heavyweight champion who, of course, gained a lot of weight so he could be the heavyweight in this film. Um, so the story is pretty straightforward. Um, the film takes you back. It even starts out with a version of Take You Back by Frank Stallone that was, used in the first 3 films of the franchise. And that's a nice welcome thing to see again. And it was nice to see a natural return to Rocky's roots. It didn't feel forced in this film. It felt natural. It felt like you could have just ignored Rocky 5. And Stallone kind of does. He distances this film from Rocky 5 as much as he can. But there's still some references like Home Team and a few stuff like that. But he tries to distance himself as far away from it as he possibly can, which is understandable. It was a good idea. But you could still look at this film as if Rocky 5 didn't even exist. Because even with those references, you could just think, oh, they're just references that were just, they're referencing the previous film, but they don't necessarily have to be from the previous film. I mean, you could just put them into this film. I mean, yeah, he's poor, but not really poor, because he runs his own restaurant. He has his own place, so he's not really poor anymore. I think he's middle class at least, or he has a good amount of money. He's just not choosing to live extravagantly. So, and plus Adrian passed away, so he just wants to stay. It's one of those things where he doesn't want to leave. He feels at home here, and Adrian is here, and he just wants to stay here, which is understandable. I mean, why would he want to move out when, his wife is buried like right down the road? So, and he visits her multiple times in the film. And I guess in the original cut of the movie, it was just over 2.5 hours. Um, and there are like scenes in it that, understandably cut out, like Rocky seeing somebody in an elevator, on the escalator, in at his son's work, he thinks is Adrian, and then he found out it's not. It's somebody else. I mean, even Stallone admitted we didn't need that. It was a little bit of overkill. And there was like there was even more scenes of him visiting Adrian's grave. Like, I didn't need more of that. Like, the few scenes that we got were good enough. And so yeah, and there's other stuff like Stallone, Rocky sparring, getting his ass kicked, which we really didn't need. Um, but yeah, it was cut down to 1 hour and 45 minutes, which is good, because the film had a little bit of some slow spots anyway. So if it was that long, it would have been even more slow paced. So, but what happens is there's this computer fight, which on ESPN, which takes in these different algorithms and stats and stuff, and puts Rocky against the current champion, Mason the Lion Dixon. Rocky wins. This causes some big thing. What? Okay, all right. Food. Food delivery. uh, so this causes some big popular upswing in the popularity of Rocky and things like that, and Rocky ends up deciding while this is getting viral hits, he decides he's thinking about fighting again because he's got stuff in the basement he wants to let out. And so he goes to the boxing commission. They deny him his license at first, but he has a great speech where he gets them to give him the license, which is, I'll try to do it justice, but And the stuff in the basement scene, I just want to mention that before I get to this sequence. The stuff in the basement scene is some phenomenal acting by Stallone. Because what he's doing is he's talking to Paulie, and he's talking to him about what's going on, and and he's telling him he's just deciding he wants to fight. And this is soon after he told his son, and his son's like, you don't need to do this. This is embarrassing. It's going to be embarrassing for me and embarrassing for you. But he's like, I got to do it. And there's this subtle release of emotion that Stallone has that is just phenomenal. And Stallone's performance in this entire movie was great. I don't see why this performance is not worthy of the Golden Globe nominations that his performance in Creed got. He was good in Creed, but he was also really good in this movie, and just as good. And I don't see why he didn't get it. He didn't get the acclaim for this. So he has that scene where he's talking about in the basement, stuff in the basement, talking about how I didn't know it was supposed to be this hard, and talking about Adrian's, death. And then he decides, okay, I'm going to start training, I'm going to start doing something, but first, of course, he's got to get the boxing license. So, in another great performance by Stallone, he goes to the commission, they deny his request, and he comes back with this really good response. Yo, don't I get some rights? What rights do you think you're referring to? Rights? Like in that official piece of paper that rode down the street there. That's the Bill of Rights. Yeah, Bill of Rights. Don't it say something about going after what makes you happy? No, that's the pursuit of happiness. But what's your point? My point is, I'm pursuing something and nobody looks too happy about it. But we're just looking out for your interests. I appreciate that. But maybe you're looking out for your interests just a little bit more. I mean, you shouldn't be asking people to come down here and pay the freight something they paid that still ain't good enough. I mean, you think that's right? I mean, maybe you're doing your job, but why are you going to stop me from doing mine? Because if you're willing to go through all the battling you got to go through to get what you want to get, who's got the right to stop you? I mean, maybe some of you guys had something you never finished. Something you really wanted to do. Something you never said to someone. Something, and you're told no. Even after you paid your dues? Who's got the right to tell you that? Who? Nobody! It's your right to listen to your gut. It ain't nobody's right to say no after you earn the right to be where you want to be and do what you want to do. You know, the older I get, the more things I gotta leave behind. That's life. The only thing I'm asking you guys to leave on the table is what's right. I don't know if I did that justice. That's an excellent scene. They give him his boxing license, and so he agrees to do the fight with Mason Dixon. It's an exhibition fight. Mason Dixon's a hated champion. He was even getting pelted with ice by fans. So this is a way for him to get back to the fans and for him to get a little bit more respect from the fans. Let's find an actual opponent, a legend, Rocky Balboa, and take advantage of the buzz that came from this computer fight. So, of course, Rocky gets a Duke, starts training. We get a really good training montage. It was nice to see a montage again. We didn't really get a training montage. It kind of did in Rocky 5, but it really wasn't that great. So we get a nice training montage with old school Bill Conti music. Gonna fly now. Rocky's drinking raw eggs again. It was a nice blast from the past. And even before that, there's another great scene, which of course I would be remiss if I didn't mention. And forgive me if you hear laughing and carrying on and whatever. My parents are home and they're giving me food and then talking and carrying on and whatever. So it is what it is. But anyway, before I get to the actually talking about the rest of the training, running up the steps and stuff like that, let's mention, of course, this scene, which everybody remembers, and this is the scene that really, really hits home for me. So this is where he's got the license. He's going to talk to his son about things that are going on. And this is actually what happens before he trains, because it's pretty important, because he gets his relationship back with his son and gets his son, basically what he does, he gets his son back on the right track, and then his son's there in his corner for the rest of the film. You ain't gonna believe, he was like, you ain't gonna believe this. That used to fit right here. I'd hold you up and say to your mother, this kid's gonna be the best kid in the world. This kid's gonna be somebody better than anybody I ever knew. And you grew up good and wonderful. It was great just watching you. Every day was like a privilege. And then the time come for you to be your own man and take on the world, and you did. But somewhere along the line, you changed. Stop being you. You let people stick a finger in your face and tell you're no good. And then when things got hard, you started looking for something to blame, like a big shadow. Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it'll beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. It's how much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, then go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that. And that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son and you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. So, great speech. One of the I think it's the best speech Rocky's ever had in any of these films. It's a very, very powerful speech, very moving, very gripping, very powerful. So that helps uh, his son Robert get on the right track. He quits his job because he's just trying to be in with the in crowd. He doesn't feel comfortable. Decides he wants to be with his dad, and they got the training sequences, and Rocky's getting stronger, and then runs up the steps again, which is the last scene that was shot because Stallone decided that would be a good way to end a good way for him to shoot the last time he's gonna run up the steps. Which of course he went up the steps in Creed, but it wasn't running. But he just thought it was a nice way for him to say farewell to the franchise. And then you get the fight, which is a fun fight. It's well shot. It's well edited. I really would have liked the actual the actual movie sound effect punches. The real punches don't pack as much of a punch in terms of the sound effects. But I like the way it's edited. I love the cinematography. And Rocky goes the distance with Mason Line Dixon. Nobody thought he could. In an exhibition bout, people thought it was going to be a joke. He proves that he still got it. Still got one last great fight left in him. He gets all that stuff out of the basement. It's gone. And he goes off and into the sunset. He walks off into the sunset, waves to the crowd, and they cheer his name. And it's an emotional. I swear to God, I tear up, I smile, I clap every time at the end of this movie. It's I love it. I love the way that this film ends the franchise. It goes the distance, just like he did with Apollo, with the new champion, and it was something that was really a good way to end it. I know there was other endings like he won, which I just it doesn't really I don't like that. It works much better that he goes the distance. And then the ending is great where he goes back to Adrian's gravestone and he says, "Yo, Adrian, we did it." And then it was just like it's just. But the problem is like the end credits, a bunch of Rocky fans running up the steps. It's just like I didn't need that. Can we have like a montage or something, like a footage from the other films with Bill Conti's music? I mean, they had Bill Conti's music, "We're Gonna Fly Now," but it's like random people running up the steps. It's just kind of corny. It's kind of a really weird way to show. I guess I guess it was a way to get back to the fans, but I'd rather use the custom ending that I made, where I took the end credits, I expanded them. I took the still slideshow from Rocky Five, I put that in there, then put some footage, and I put "Measure of a Man" by Elton John, and then I put like a little bit of Bill Conti's score. Um, but those are some of that's Rocky Balboa. I really like this movie. I always have. I think it's a really fun. It's an entertaining movie. It's a great way to end the franchise. It's got great performances by Stallone and even Burt Young and Geraldine Hughes. Even Milo Ventimiglia, I think, does a good job. Stallone does a good job directing it and writing the film. I like the cinematography. The editing is solid. Um, this is edited by Sean Albertson, cinematography by Clark Mathis. It was Bill Conti reused some of his old scores, but they're still great scores. It's still great to hear them again. They really are the heart of the franchise, and I don't think the franchise would be the same without them. And I pretty much like pretty much everything about this movie except for um, Antonio Tarver's a lame villain. Like he's a lame antagonist. He's like the most forgettable antagonist. Like Tommy Gunn is more memorable to me than Antonio Tarver. He can't act. Tommy Morrison wasn't the greatest actor either, but I thought he was a little bit better actor than Antonio Tarver. There wasn't as much there, but there didn't need to be because he wasn't necessarily the antagonist in this film was not really Tarver. It was Rocky's grief. It was Rocky's beast that was in his basement, the emotions that he's kept inside all these years after his wife's death. That's the real antagonist that he was facing in this film. And Tarver was just the way for him to beat it. And I thought the film handled that really well. So, other than that, maybe a teeny bit of pacing issues because it takes a while to get going. But once it does, it's definitely worth it. I really don't know what to say about the film. Um, Except if it was a rate Rocky Balboa out of 5 stars, I'm gonna give it 4.5 out of 5. I don't find nearly enough wrong with it to really hurt the film that much. Just some pacing issues, kind of like how I felt about some of the other Rocky films, but it's right up there with Rocky 2 and 3 for me, and Rocky. It's as good as the first film, as good as the second film. I mean, not really Rocky 3 because I like that more than this, but I would say like I said, right up there with Rocky and Rocky 2, and it's the last truly great Rocky film for me. But anyway, thanks for watching my review of Rocky Balboa, and I will see you guys later. See ya.